and about the webinar, and also invite other speakers. The agenda for this day essentially is to have a conversation around gender inclusivity in the creative sector, because as a program that we're implementing, which my colleague will speak more to, we've realized certain gaps in this space that we want to have conversations around. And NIERA and the program itself has a huge research and learning agenda where we want to see what is working and, most importantly, what is not working, to at least support these female creatives and just generally the youth in the creative space. So NIERA is a professional network. Our mission is to advance decision-focused evaluations of development programs across Africa through training, building technical capacity in impact evaluation. We generate a lot of evidence, and we do policy outreach and engagement with different policymakers and stakeholders. We were founded in 2018, and our secretariat is currently hosted at USIU Africa. And we currently have over 65 members that represent close to 10 African countries: Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Ghana, the West, the South, that range across 10 African countries. The key focus, even about this webinar, NIERA, is what we call our demand-driven research initiative. So NIERA launched this demand-driven research initiative to potentially catalyze sustainable development, economic growth, and poverty elevation in Africa. Because we realize a lot of evidence is being generated, a lot of knowledge gaps are being produced, but we lost the point where is it actually a need of a policymaker? Are we co-creating research questions with policymakers or these stakeholders who are essentially able to implement programs based on the evidence that we produce? So DDRI, as we coined it, it emerged to respond to the push for evidence-based policymaking, and it accelerated with growing emphasis to conduct research that responds to specific needs of different policymakers. NIERA's current research portfolio is in financial inclusion. We have projects in agriculture, we have projects in health, and we have projects in youth employability in the creative industry, which is this program that we're focusing on today. And our focus countries, as it stands, is across Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. So moving into the research and learning agenda, and specifically tying today's conversation about the program we're talking about, the Creative Arts Residence and Empowerment Project, COCARE, which I'll invite my colleague to speak more to. So NIERA is keen on the research and learning bit, and we're supporting it in terms of generating evidence and filling knowledge gaps to improve the COCARE project. Because we realize that there are a lot of nuances and a lot of gaps that are in the creative industry that we are not able to fill at the onset of the program. So the benefit to NIERA and the COCARE program is trying to see how we can fill certain knowledge gaps and try to influence policy and decision making at the level that can support these young people who are in this space. We also tend to advance our understanding of critical aspects related to youth employment in the creative sector. And our third goal is we need to organize and disseminate existing insights and forming conclusions and recommendations. Our belief is with every phase, our training phase, with our mentorship phase, as my colleague will speak more to, we want to continuously learn and document all this and see how we can share these insights with decision makers to ensure that it influences policies and different programs. Our 4 strategic areas of inquiry. 1 is gender mainstreaming and inclusive practices. And this has brought to this inaugural webinar where we are looking at gender inclusivity in the creative sector. But you'll see we have other strategic areas of inquiry. We're looking at systemic barriers. What are the legal barriers? What are the financial barriers that youth face in accessing finance in the creative sector? What are access to market, policy regulations? Are there hindrances or are there opportunities that exist that they can take advantage of? We're looking at job decency as well, decent work conditions, job security, fair compensation, and job tenure. And then AI. Technology advancements. How can we critically leverage AI and machine learning algorithms to contribute sustainably to the creative careers for these young people? This is the core basis of our research and learning agenda that this program is focusing on and NIERA is supporting. And with that, let me invite my colleague, the program manager of the co-care program, to give an overview about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the insightful comments, Jennifer. My name is Amos Jogona, and I'm the project lead for this insightful project. It's important to bring us to an understanding that this is a project that started sometimes last year, actually late 2022, with an in-depth understanding of the creative industry, and the kind of learnings we are presenting today highlight the stages that we have so far taken. So we started the project by going to stakeholders to understand why the creative sector is not creating as many jobs as we would expect. It's growing, but not creating jobs. So we talked to stakeholders. We also talked to young people who are in this industry to understand what they are going through, and specifically looked at women. And that is why we formed the learning agenda that Jennifer has shared. It's a project that's led by USIU Africa, implemented along with our partners across solutions, in partnership with the Challenge Fund for Youth Employment. So the previous phase has been about designing the program, co-creating the program with stakeholders, and now we are at a level where we have recruited young people to join the industry, to join the program. So the learnings now we are sharing are what have we learned with regard to the recruitment, and what is the data telling us at baseline. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what you see on screen is we had 9 weeks of application. So we started by throwing out the application, assuming gender equal, assuming that the information will reach people in the same way, no specific intervention for women or men. We just made the application and threw it out there. If you look at what is in week 1, we received, out of the total applications received in week 1, 64% came from men, and you can see the red bar is male, the female is on the blue one. In the second week, we received 70% out of the total applications received the second week. You can see all along up to week 5, more than 2/3 of the applications received were from men. So we reached a point and we said, no, without an intervention, and that's the learning, that when you have any program and you are taking it out there for young people, without having special intervention for women, you will not get the right, or you will get very few applicants. So in the second, after week 5, we decided now to have deliberate measures. For example, supposing we talk to organizations that are inclined to women and encourage them to apply. Supposing we change the advert and include things like women are highly encouraged to apply. Supposing we take special measures. So you can see in week 6, we start seeing different results. Fewer male, more women applying. In week 7, the same. In week 8, the same. By the time we were closing the applications in week 9, almost all the applications were received from women. So this tells us that it conveys information about how does the information, the way the information reaches young women is different from the way it reaches young men. And so if you are a practitioner or a policy maker, that is something that you need to pay attention to in your program design and in terms of encouraging women to apply. Please go to slide number 4. By the time we closed the applications, by the time we closed the applications, nevertheless, we still had more male than female at 55% to 45%. But as you can see, the interventions that we did, were good because they enabled us to close the gender gap by about 11 percentage points, because by the time it was week 4, remember it was 67% male, 33% female. But by the time we did the female strategies encouraging young women to join the program, we managed to close the gender gap slightly. Next, please. In terms of education, we didn't find significantly different levels of education because most of the young men, either young men or young women, you can actually see there was slightly higher, those with higher than secondary education. We had about 73%, and slightly higher for women as opposed to men, which was a good thing. But there was no statistically different results. Please go to slide number 6. In slide number 6, this is where we have very exciting findings, because you can see we asked these young people to say which type of creative engagements are you interested in, and the results are on the chart. And as you can see, most of the creatives are involved in music, film and cinema, theater and drama, as well as dance. And of course, you can see visual arts, poetry, and spoken art, and all that. But the question then that one would ask is, what is the involvement? What kind of involvement is there when you get into either of these activities? Which are the most paying careers for creatives, especially when creatives have to do their specific gigs? And you will notice that the most of the men are in higher paying creative engagements compared to women. Please proceed. And when you look at the years of experience, again, we find that although their age is relatively the same, because the average age for men, I think, is 24.9, and for women, it's 24.5. So the average age of men and women is the same. But when you look at the years of their experience in the creative sector, we find that male or men have a bit more, they have got a bit more engagement in the creatives. And this engagement, of course, we know that in this sector, the longer you have been in this industry, the higher the potential to earn, the higher the potential to create a decent job, and the higher the potential to make an income and a decent life out of it. In the next slide, we see the number of hours that men and women spend in the creative sector. Statistically significantly high for male, averaging over 20. On average, the average creative did 20 hours, did 20 hours a week. Men did 21 hours a week, and women 18 hours a week. So they're reporting how much time do you spend. Again, there is a correlation between spending time on a creative activity, the quality of that output, and the commercialization aspect of that output. And so the data is clear that this is a gap that would need to be closed. And of course, in-depth inquiry shows that some of the reasons why for women lesser involvement is that they are much more involved in caregiving work. They are the ones taking care of children. They are the ones taking the children to school and all that, which then reduces the number of hours they have engaging in in the creative work, which is supposed to be an income for them. Next, please. In the next slide, we demonstrate the income. We did not find statistically significant higher levels of income between female and male. However, it's important to note that the male income from the creative was still high, 8,434 on average, compared to female 7,346, a whole gap of about 1,100. Though not statistically significant, because the average income was 8,012, meaning that, however, some women earned a bit more, which outweighed the average for the men. But nevertheless, when you look at the average income, that of men is higher than that of women. 10, please. We also did not find significant differences with regard to access to training and mentorship. That both men and women access the training and mentorship opportunities equally. So the incidences of training, and so this data was very useful for us, because then it helps us form the basis of our discussion today. Next. So in terms of knowledge on intellectual property rights, business formalization, and government sector, the numbers indicated on the red again tell the whole story. Are you aware of existence of intellectual property rights? Those that are not aware, women 54%, male 39%. Do you know the process of registration? No. Everywhere where you have a no, we find a bit higher rates, higher responses from women compared to men. Is your creative art business registered? For women, 93% no. For men, 86% is a no. Do you have access to government loans and grants? Women, 92% no. Men, 90% no. Have you any partnership or collaborations? Again, men, women discrepancy. Let's proceed. So reported cases of discrimination, violation, and harassment. Again, we find relatively the same, although this is also a question that we found a bit of, this is a question, discrimination, slide number 12, is a question where we found that the young people were not coming out to talk more openly about it. When we did earlier on did focus group discussions, of almost every young person we found out said, we are in a country that has its owners, or we are in a sector that has its owners. There are so many gatekeepers. I would be required to undertake some unethical acts for me to be able to get into this position. And these results are coming out. It's clear. Again, you can see affecting the overall sector, but it is harassment is applicable to both men and women alike in this sector. Please go ahead. So in terms of the ownership of a bank account or membership in a SACCO, these are the measurements for financial barriers. And you can see those who said that they have memberships in a SACCO or memberships in a bank, again, you can see members of the SACCO, the proportion of respondents having saving accounts and SACCO memberships. So you can see for female, 90% are saying we don't have, 10% have. And again, for male, 88%, 12%. No significant difference, which could also be an indication of the overall happening of the things in the economy. But overall, owning a bank account, whether male or female, that really doesn't count. Lastly, we also looked at ownership of bank account and membership in the SACCO, because we said, where exactly are these people owning? And again, you can see other sources. Most of the creatives are using money from friends and business family, followed by microfinance loans, group loans, quite a number, youth funds, and then again, 13% do not have any access, but you can also see their mobile phone loans and all that. So those are the major, but these are the areas that do not have significant difference between men and women. So how are we using these numbers? We are using these numbers now to do a deliberate intervention that involves training, mentorship, access to finance, training, mentorship, access to finance through some circle, and then also supporting with business registration services and connecting with the private sector players to see areas where the creative sector can improve and whether these young people can make their life the young people enrolled in the program can make their life out of the creative sector. Can they create sustainable jobs? So they are into the program, but this is only the baseline data that has been collected and analyzed late 2023, early 2024. So thank you very much. I return it back to you, Jennifer, with the say that we will surely be coming back with more data on what we are finding out in this experiment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Amos Juguna, for that presentation on the co-care program. I want us to move into the plenary discussion. But before that, for those who have just joined us, feel free to put in your questions in the chat or in the Q&A box that you'll see in your screen, and we'll have a chance to at least respond to them. And we request that you don't unmute yourself, especially when we're having the discussions, so that we can have a good flow and everyone is able to listen to what is being presented. So allow me to introduce my distinguished panelists. I will ask that they introduce themselves, starting off with your screen and then just saying who you are and just give a brief introduction before now we can move on. Let me start off with Melissa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Kiplagat. I'm an actor, been an actor, I think this is my 11th year professionally. Started in theater, then went to do my master's in acting in the UK in London. I came back, I train actors as well. I do a monthly masterclass. But yeah, most people would probably know me from Country Queen on Netflix. So I'm just getting back into my training and acting again. I had a little one, I took a break. But yeah, I'm very impressed by the statistics that I've seen to see that there are numbers in that, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Great. Wambui?
Hello, I hope everyone can see me. My name is Wambui Mukundi. I am the Director of Operations at Zebra Productions Limited. This is a film productions company that produces African films. And most currently, we're known for the film, the series Salem, which has done 2 seasons, that is season 1 and season 2. And, you know, something fresh is also coming, so I'm also involved in the pre-production of that. Apart from my life as a producer, I'm also a lawyer. Have been for the last 10 years. And so I have been able to be part of discussions on intellectual property management. I have also represented discussions, presented in discussions for registration of copyright and general protection of rights in any creative works. I'm not sure what else is important for these particular discussions, but as a lawyer, I've also negotiated a wide range of commercial contracts, most not related to the film industry, but some in the creative industry. Lastly, I am very passionate about matters of making impact for youth, for the youth and women as well. So as part of that particular initiative, I train at a multi-choice film factory on the interaction between the film industry and the film industry and the law. I do the same at Kenya Film School. So I have interacted with quite a number of youth and women when it comes to matters and challenges in the film industry. I think that should suffice, Jennifer, for now.
Perfect, perfect. Moira? We can't.
I can hear.
We can't hear you. Okay, maybe as she's sorting it, has Ziki been able to join?
Yes, I have.
May you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be part of this panel today. My name is Valentine Ziki. I'm an actor, musician, voiceover artist, and I also have my own production company, as well as an organization that undertakes research to do with creatives in the area of intellectual property and safer workspaces for creatives. And I'm glad to be a part of this discussion. I've been listening to, I joined in late, I had an issue, connectivity issue, but I was listening to the statistics that have been offered. And I think it's fantastic that this research is being carried at this point in time. And I'm excited to learn more and to share my journey as well as my experiences. I've been a creative for the last 20 years. And I would say that being a woman in this space comes with its own challenges as well as a few adventures here and there. So I'm pretty much excited to be a part of this panel today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Moira, have you been able to get your audio set? Could try again. Okay, probably you could log off and then try logging back in. We see if it'll work. Huh? Great. I guess we'll start off. I'll start off by just trying to listen to reactions from the panelists based on the presentation that Prof. Chuguna just shared. What are your thoughts? What are your reactions on what we have shared in terms of what the program is trying to do and the statistics that we have presented? Let me go to Amboy first.
Wow, I'm overwhelmed by the information, I must admit. And mostly it is because perhaps I live in a bit of a bubble where, I have known the existence of that information, but not in that sort of overwhelming numbers. When the numbers are presented to you, then you begin to realize the problem is perhaps bigger than you thought, and that perhaps a bit more interventions are needed. But it does resonate with a lot of concerns that have been raised, especially by women and generally young people on the matter. So yes, I am glad we will have this discussion, because then we'll be able to see what interventions are necessary and just hear also from the rest on what it is that's happening on the ground that we may miss out. I say that as a producer, and also just to be able to, to see what's happening in our houses and how to fix it. Yeah. So for me, that's a very interesting, the statistics are overwhelming.
Indeed. Melissa, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts also and your reactions on the presentation, and just trying to look at the lens of how we see gender is represented in different sectors as we've presented it there, and those disparities that are quite glaring. Any thoughts on that?
First, just thank you for the people who compiled those statistics. I'm in a pretty big actors group. We have like 700 actors. And that's what we're always calling for, is like, we need to see statistics. So to see that work is being done is great. It was just very interesting. I know the thing that probably stuck out to me most was like the monthly income. I was like, how are people surviving on that? As in, wow. But in terms of the disparities, I was surprised at how many of the statistics he went through, where we were not that far from being equal. Sometimes I think for some people in the industry, can feel like women and men are very, very far apart. So I think that was shocking. I think when we look, I think I'd be very interested, Amos and the team who do the statistics, to see breakdowns within specific industries, like in the entertainment film industry, because I think that's where you see a lot of the disparities. Maybe not so much like with acting. I think we're doing pretty well. We have a lot of female leads. A lot of shows are based around women. A lot of people in positions of power, such as One Boy, are women. Heads of a lot of the networks are women. So we do have a lot of women throughout, but there are obviously certain departments, let's say in film, like the behind the camera, more the behind the camera departments, whether it's light, sound, camera, where it is very heavily men. I think in my 11 years, I've only been maybe on one set where there is either an equal number of women and men on the set, or predominantly women. Almost every set I'm on, because of the crews, it is predominantly men. So it is a bit shocking to see that we are a lot more equal. I'd love to see breakdowns within each creative industry. But I honestly think we're there. Women are there. If you look at even our speakers today, we really are present. I'd be interested to see how we can bridge that gap without disenfranchising the men, because I also don't think that's the solution. So yeah, it's a complicated balance. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Ziki, borrowing on Melissa's point in terms of those disparities and just seeing how like women are there, but still there are a lot of biases and different gender stereotypes. What's your reflection based on the results, the statistics that we have shown? And also, do you feel like in your line of work or even in your career, have you identified any cultural or societal factors or stereotypes or even biases that may impact the success of women in the creative industry and their journey?
In 2021, we carried out a research based on trying to find out how creatives feel in general about their workspaces. The research was titled Safer Workspaces for Creatives within the creative sector, obviously. And we actually published a toolkit on the same. And part of our research actually reflects what the professor has shared, even in terms of the balance. Like I like what Melissa has said, it's a complicated balance, because from what we deduced was creatives don't feel safe within their spaces. Most of our workspaces do not even have a sexual harassment policy. You don't have any supervisors that you can go report to, and there's nothing actionable that can be done. So that's just on that level of, how safe do I feel? How safe do I feel when I'm going to work? How safe do I feel when I'm within that work environment? And am I protected by my employers? Do I have somewhere where I can get some sort of reprieve, right? And we've not even gotten into the pay gap, because there is a pay gap. And in as much as Professor has said that, for men and women, it's pretty much the same in terms of, how we feel in terms of harassment. But I would say from our research, for women, it's always worse. It's always worse because women are more vulnerable, and it's not because we want to disenfranchise our male colleagues. That's not the intention. However, even for men, it's still a problem that we cannot feel safe within our workspaces. How are we going to encourage the next generation to come in? How are we going to encourage them to create and to join our workforce within the creative industry, where our intellectual property is not safe, and then we ourselves, as our own persons, we don't have agency. So I feel he's pointed out some very vital information that we need to look into, and there needs to be more policy changes for sure.
Amazing. Moira, have you been able to connect so we can hear you? Just to confirm. I think.
Hi.
Oh, hello.
Webcam mic wasn't working. Hello.
Yes, you could maybe introduce yourself as you react to the presentation.
My name is Moira. Moira Komu. I'm a film and animation lecturer at Multimedia University, and I am the producer of the Almasi project. The Almasi project is an animated series, a 2D animated series for children, 52 10-minute 2D shorts, and episode 1 and 2 are available on YouTube. The animation is done at Multimedia University, That's where I am right now. I'm at Multimedia University, and the people who do it are recent graduates and interns at the university. And I've been in the creative industry in Kenya for about 30 years now. I did a B.Ed in Fine Art in KU 30 years ago, and I've been trying ever since to make the creative industry work. I didn't see any big surprises in the research that was presented. Except in the thing about copyright awareness. I noticed that the men seem to know a little bit more about how to register their copyrights. But that 75% level of cluelessness about what to do about harassment, yeah, that was about par for the course. Yeah, that's what I thought.
You talked about copyrights, and I think you have some experience with, is it called NRTs? Would you want to maybe, NFTs, sorry, yes.
Yeah, and NFTs are non-fungible tokens. They're a cryptocurrency thing. They are a way of getting a digital signature on a piece of your artwork. The jury is still out on NFTs. They could potentially be a huge vehicle to obtain financing for films and fine art, because the sale of an NFT is an NFT contains a digital contract which remits royalties to you for the life of the blockchain, which is hopefully, as you know, as long as computers last. Yeah. And you can produce any kind of artwork on an NFT, whether it's, I've got a film which is on an NFT, which is an NFT, and you can produce little JPEGs or music or just sounds, and they are collector's items, as exactly like any other kind of collector's item in the world, stamps or baseball cards or paintings, and people love them the same way they love collecting paintings, or it just depends what you get an enthusiasm for. I know there's a lot of fuss about using NFTs for tokenization of real world objects. I'm not sure. They're supposed to be used for trustless transactions, and that when you interface them with the real world, then you need to trust people again. Yeah, that's what I can say about NFTs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I asked that specifically because I think in this program, we're trying to at least create some awareness for the young creatives to see different avenues where they can, monetize their talent and get money out of their passion. That's why I raised that. So thank you so much for those insights. Let me come back to you, Wamboe. Ziki talked about, safe spaces, I think decent working conditions. I'd like to know from your perspective, maybe not say an employer, but having interacted with different industry players and associations, what do you feel, or what are your thoughts in terms of ensuring decent working conditions and even fair compensation for women in the creative industry? And your thoughts and reflections in terms of how can different industry players create inclusive pathways for some of these young female creatives or youth who face barriers to entry to the job market and also just retention within their jobs?
All right, thanks, Jennifer. That's a very heavy question, and responding as someone who's in the production space, I am working hard not to sound defensive in any way and be present the utmost objective position. What I will say, my observation generally is that there is disparity in the pay. But I've not been able to say that if we are doing the same job, doing the same, taking the same position, and I'll use an example of a female DOP and a male DOP, that is where the pay gap is going to come from. What I will say I've experienced is there are certain areas where you will find there's a lot more males than females, so perhaps they're entered into the industry earlier, they're able to, using the experience, negotiate, based on what they feel they bring to the table, they're able to negotiate. And I do feel like the film industry at least was predominantly male, at least in some of the technical positions. So it is true we've observed that. There are males entering in certain positions and therefore finding themselves in a position to negotiate for better pay. So it is true that interventions honestly need to be made. First, to equal the entry levels for females within the space. Some of the things that have been done, and I will start by commending government institutions that are involved in implementation of various either policies or just various regulations. In terms of the training levels, most institutions that are training have already leveled the playing field for the women and for the men just as well, because you will find it is very clear that a certain threshold must be met, especially those that are run, as parastatals are from government. I will say that is my experience with the likes of Kenya Film School and even others that are in the private space. So that gives an opportunity for everyone in terms of institutions. It gives an opportunity for everyone to receive the training, which is ideally what you need to first get before you find yourself in the employment space. Now, what other interventions are there or need to be there? I find then that getting entry into the job market is where the challenge is, and therefore the conversation of how much are you being paid? Are you even being employed? Do you even have capacity to negotiate and things like that? I do feel that employers need to have specific initiatives to then make it easy for people to enter into, for women to enter into that space. The initiatives that come off the top of my head is, as Amos was presenting, I did notice that before the women are encouraged to apply or females are encouraged to apply, there was a low number of applicants. And I couldn't remember what specific, the position was. But then when that statement was put in there, at the very end, you see there's equal number of applicants. So there's making sure that for every position, females are encouraged to apply. I've seen positions where when we put out a call for, say, a DOP and you say a female DOP is encouraged, I have seen positions where, then women feel like now this is someone who recognizes, that such a position can be a female position. On the general, in terms of the decency of the pay, and I know it's a very loaded question, so I'm struggling to pick points on all areas. In terms of the decency of the pay, my gut reaction coming from a production space is most of what I find is production companies find themselves in a space where they are working from project to project to project. So the element of the decency of pay then comes in the context of, unlike some industries where you can be employed to do whatever, whenever, this industry you will find that you have a project for 5 months and that's what you're engaged with, and therefore you're more of a, I'll say, consultant or an independent service provider. So you're going to find a lot of long hours, long hours for all genders, of course. And it is the female and the women that seem to fall off, the wagon, because they have other responsibilities that probably need to take care of more intimately that men can, avoid. And I know that's an area that I need to come very correctly about. And therefore, what we have, at least what I feel can be done in terms of the hours of work, is limiting the number of hours per day. Of course, there's a question of, can the budgets that are available for a project allow that? But I see those are interventions that employers can make, not to reduce the number of women in the space in a project, but to ensure the number of hours are capped. Maybe to match the working hours, 8 to 5, or at worst, maybe 12 hours. That again is a budget conversation, and that's a story, I think, for also another platform. Yeah, I don't know if I still have a minute to say a general problem. I would say in the creative space, I would say is financing, and I need to start by saying various organizations have come in to provide financing and resource provision for that particular, for some, and some filmmakers and other creative spaces have been able to enjoy that. I'll commend KFC because they have been, they've done very targeted, empowerment programs where people have been able to access financing. So that means that then you can be able to pay people decently. That's for pay for a project. But then when it's over, then it's a different story altogether. So again, financing generally affects the entire ecosystem of the film industry, and that is a big contributor to how decent the jobs can be. But I should hope I've at least scratched the surface on that discussion because it's a very heavy discussions. As I close, can I say associations need to be a bit talk from a point of harmony and alignment, because we have associations of actors, of producers, of broadcasters. And perhaps once we're able to harmonize on what is normal working hours, what is good pay for a project that is, going to this particular platform, then we can also harmonize the elements of, for this, people will need to work this long and this is the reasonable pay. It is still quite an unequal, relationship where sometimes you take what's available for a project and then you work, and crew suffer, cast suffer, and I would imagine that applies across the board for all the creatives. So that's a big discussion on harmonizing, harmonizing the relationships with all associations within the industry. Yeah. I beg to close at that. Otherwise, if you let me, I'll speak for too long.
Thank you. Audience, please feel free to put your questions on the chat and or the QA section. We'll have in a few minutes, we'll have a chance to respond to them. But I want to speak to Melissa in terms of your journey, especially because you say you're an international actress, and I think I believe probably you've had a lot of I don't say hurdles, but you're listening to your journey might be very useful to some of our audiences, because when we talk to some of these creatives, they have a sense of there's a certain gatekeeper you need to know before you can access a certain opportunity or a certain market. But having flourished in this space, I would like to hear how it has been for you, and in a way, even tying into the previous question I asked Wamboi, but from a point of somebody who's been employed or been in the space, how has the working conditions been for you, the compensation and all that?
Okay, there's a lot in that. I think in a lot of ways I've been very fortunate in this space. There's certain things I know a lot of women have dealt with, whether that's sexual harassment and things of that nature that I haven't necessarily dealt with, that I know people personally who definitely deal with that. In terms of my journey, and especially on the question of gatekeepers, like I said, I host masterclasses, so I'm always with young actors, people joining the industry, and that's always a conversation that we have. I know that it feels like that, especially to new actors. You go to a big audition and you're only seeing the same faces just cut the line and go in, and they're always getting hired. What I would respond to that is there's a reason why these people keep getting hired, the same way there's a reason why Denzel Washington keeps getting hired, even though maybe there's a young Chadwick Boseman somewhere who's a better actor maybe. But it's because the people in the industry already know how these people work. They already have relationships with them. Directors sometimes prefer to work with actors they've worked with before because they've already built that relationship with them. So what I always say to young actors is like, just remember, all those people that you think are getting all the jobs, they also started where you started and they didn't know anyone. And so they themselves, me included, I had to build my network the same way any new actor has to build their network. That being said, I think if you even look at the shows right now, a lot of the big shows, the lead actors are people, I've never seen them in anything else before. So also don't let that demoralize you for new actors, and just know there's a space. If they're having auditions because they're looking for something new, so there is a lot of roles that are still going to new actors. In terms of, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm blanking. What else do I want to talk about? Give me something else that you asked me about. I've forgotten now. Oh, let me talk about compensation. It has been, I think in the first couple of years of my life, the only reason I could be in this industry is because I was still getting support from my parents. I was still living at home. If I was paying rent and all those things, let me be honest, I couldn't be in this industry. It just wasn't making enough money. And all the way to now, I think for me, a huge turning point was when I got pregnant, because I've been in the industry 7-8 years. And when you look back and you're just like, you're looking at the people you went to high school with, and these people have cars, they have homes, they have land, and you're just like, this is me with 2 degrees, and what am I doing? Like, it doesn't translate. It doesn't make sense in terms of what life I'm able to provide. And when I got pregnant, for me, it was a turning point, and I was just like, this cannot be my main hustle. And so I do other things on the side, and that's what I pay my bills with. And to be honest, I always encourage young actors, like, if you can have other things that are bringing you in money, so you're doing acting by choice and not because you're forced to, not only does it give you the peace of mind of you can have a lifestyle, but it also gives you the power that you need to say no to certain treatment. If you're being underpaid, if you're dealing with sexual harassment, because your livelihoods and paying the rent, getting food is not determined by doing this job or not, it's a lot easier to say no and be more selective. So for me personally, at this point, I'll be honest, acting doesn't pay my bills. I do other things that pay my bills. If acting comes along, it's because I want to. And because of that, it also helps me negotiate, because I know one of us talked about being able to negotiate. First of all, women generally, I think just because of the way we're cultured, we're a lot more willing to accept whatever we're given. Men, because of the way they're cultured and they're raised, they're a lot more willing to negotiate. And that's not just in our industry, that's, I think, worldwide, we see that discrepancy, which is why a lot of times women end up with less pay. But if you have something else that you're doing that's bringing you enough money, then it's a lot easier for you to negotiate and to have a standard for yourself. So yeah, I'll be honest, unfortunately, I cannot survive on this industry right now. But I am seeing changes. I am seeing changes. Some of the people, I know what they're getting paid. I'm like, that's good money. That's good money in this here Kenya. Like, so it's not everyone. We're not all suffering, but and I think unless you're in a telenovela kind of situation, it's hard to have a family to have a certain standard. Yeah.
Wow. I don't want to say
I
it
just want
sounds.
to shout, preach.
Oh.
Everything.
You're saying preach. Do you have something to say there before I ask Mwara my question?
Oh my God, it's everything. It's everything Melissa has said. It just resonates so much with me. Getting your pay 100% from acting, or even from music, or just this one craft that you're practicing, I don't know. I think you have to be a maverick in this country, to be honest, because when you even look at the top 5 actresses who have endorsements, it's actually because of those endorsements and because they're huge influencers online as well. So it's not just from acting in itself. You actually have to look at other income streams. And then, of course, now when you're a parent, thank you very much, that just changes your whole outlook. You will do like 50 things. Yeah, your project management over there, doing other things on the side, right? Well, really, your heart is burning. The ideal would be, I just want to be on set, like, 8 months out of 12 months, or maybe, out of the year, and not have to look to these other areas for your income. But we are living in this reality, and we just have to function, because the other side to it is not doing acting at all, which for me, I've taken those gap years. I call them gap years because those years when I've done literally nothing. In fact, if I'm to walk into most sets, I would be like a new actor, because you sit down and you examine. You're like, hey, apana, this is not working out. And at some point, I actually thought, let me get into CMOs, the collection management organizations, part of which they're supposed to cater to actors and give royalties and musicians. And now that's another fresh hell altogether. That there's monies that are collected on behalf of performers in this country, and then what happens? It never gets to us. So it is such a mess. And I am sorry, we are talking about the negative bit to it, but there's no structure. We are not protected. We're not protected by policies. And that is what really hurts my soul, that we have so many young people who are so creative. They're go-getters. They're breaking so many barriers on the creative front. And then they come to this end, they figure, they actually find out that it's just not rosy and it's not looking good. And I think some of these issues are very specific to Kenya, which is a shame, because when we look at our counterparts, even in Tanzania, we look at Nigeria, things are very different. And for them, their gatekeeping is not like the ones for Kenya, where, you know, I get a job, I will not tell this other person how much I'm getting. So we end up figuring out, forgive my French, that we are getting screwed, you know, both of us. But sini wachoyo, you know, by the Kenyan creatives, let me just get into that. Like I think Wamboi mentioned that because of organizations, we just don't unify. We're starting from the micro level where we are on set. I will hide what I'm getting paid. I mean, there's a level where you have to also not, you know, tell everyone what is in your contract, because if I've paid the price 20 years, I will get my worth. If you started the other day, we won't get the same. Sawa? That is clear. However, that pay gap, like Melissa mentioned, I remember doing a presentation with another actor. After we finished, I found out I was paid like, he got like 100K, I got 20K. I just wanted to bleed. This was like for 3 hours. But you see, I never asked, I never demanded for this other side. You know, I never said, hey, by the way, you know, you could do better. I never called this other actor and said, hey, what's up? What did they offer you? So a part of this it's not a systemic issue. It's also that we are taught to be polite about money. We are taught to be polite about our demands, about our needs, and we are taught to have less agency than our male counterparts. I could go on and on, but for now, let me just say that we encourage you to come into this industry, but come in with your eyes wide open. Come in ready to advocate for yourself first and to advocate for others as well, so that we are not selfish. Nigeria works because they advocate for each other. When they gatekeep, they're keeping away Kenyans from their industry. They are selfish for themselves, you know, but they are unified. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
I think Amo's hand is up. I think he wants to react to probably what one of you has said.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And really, it's not to react, but to ask a question. You indicated that that artists are not effectively covered by policy, or are not effectively protected by policy. Which specific areas do you feel that there are policy gaps, and what can an agency like NIERA, where Jennifer works, do to lobby? Because such an institution has a mandate for engagement of policymakers to say, hey, this is what is happening, and we can provide you with some kind of thinking of how to address this in terms of policy. Over to you.
Mara, would you want to respond? Then we can go round.
Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I restarted my computer. Let me log out here then. I didn't actually hear the question. What was the question? The gentleman's question.
Okay, go ahead, Jennifer.
We're just borrowing on what the conversation around there are no clear policies or structures or associations that can help promote, you know, creatives in this space. But given the work that NIERA does, trying to influence policies, what thoughts do you have in terms of what can we do to at least, you know, try and help and have some different, have some regulations in place that can support creatives? Yeah.
And possibly which are the specific policy gaps here?
That's a real huge challenge. I saw KEBS putting out a request for product standards for graphic designers, for graphic design and video and stuff like that. They were putting out a tender for somebody to produce some product standards for creative work. And I was like, I'm glad that's not my job, because I just don't even know where to start. I'm a founding member of the Animators Association, and we've been running for 5 years now, really running, and we have still not agreed on a rate card. So never mind policies coming up, but at least actors, you guys have rate cards. Well done. I don't even know where to start in terms of the creative industry, but I don't know what policies would help, because whenever I'm in a negotiating space, I'm negotiating by myself. I know of a company which is employing animators on Mombasa Road, basically on slave labor wages. And we've not been able to intervene as an association. Maybe we're resigned as Kenyans. We feel that there's no point in arguing. We just got to accept it the way it is. So maybe it's a basic Kenyan problem, that we don't argue, we don't negotiate, and we don't talk. I really agreed with Valentine's point about not sharing information, because I've asked people up front, so what did you get for that job? And they're like, oh, I'd rather not say. So then I wondered, so did you get screwed? So should I not work for that person? Or how much do I know to ask for? I don't know. There's a lack of openness and sharing among Kenyans. And I would like to agree with what Melissa and Valentine said about needing a profession. I was just reflecting the other day how eternally thankful I am to my high school teacher who was watching while I filled in my university form. And I ticked Bachelor of Fine Arts, and she said, no, do a B.Ed Fine Arts, because you never know what's going to happen in life, and it could be useful to have. It's always useful to have a profession. So just be trained as a teacher and then do the fine arts stuff as well. And that's basically how I've run my life. I'm a teacher and I do my fine arts stuff on the side. I don't ask it to support me. And I think that there is actually an argument for why should we expect art to support itself. Art is a thing which a successful society produces as an expression of itself. So a successful society should have a structure for supporting people to be artists. Yeah. So yes, that I have arrived. I'm sorry, I walked all around the question, but yes, that is my. There should be more grant funding. Yes. Yes.
Wambui?
I'm very consoled after listening to Mara. No, I know I'm not the only one who goes round in circles when I had the point to begin with. I'm very consoled. Now, I'm responding to the question, I think, that was meant for Moira, but it is a thought I've had as the discussions were going on the policy gaps that exist. What I look at as the challenge between actors, producers, broadcasters, and the whole creative industry towards whoever it is that they feed with their creativity, and whatever the source of projects and income, where that is. I've looked at the policy gaps as just generally not being able to address the manner in which those relationships should go, in terms of what are the rates, and what is expected vis-a-vis what is expected in terms of payment vis-a-vis what sort of input is put in. So once that is not clear, then we have everyone within the creative space all through then being at a point of reacting to your needs immediately. For instance, when Moira said that there are animators that are paid slavery sort of rates, in my mind I thought, and they still show up and work, but then if their need is the kind that can be fed or that can be satisfied with that kind of rate, then it is unfair of me to have that particular comment, even the thought that when they still show up and work, but then it is just an indication of what drives, what conversations happen within the industry, and also reacting to Ziki on part of the reason I feel people don't want to talk about how much they're paid is, I would say, the shame, is it? Of, I don't want you to know I took 20K. Meanwhile, you will never know that there was 100K that could have been offered, or a conversation about increasing that rate was there. I do believe policy gaps are actually around that space of what is the structure purely there. And it's a conversation, again, I'll repeat, between structures of engagement is really between all the parties that are engaging within that space. And that's where the conversations need to be happening. Are there initiatives, I think, that have been happening? I'm sad I don't see someone from the policy space in this particular platform, because then perhaps we would hear about various discussions that are happening. I know discussions have been there for many years. I do recall a long time. I must have been 23 attending a forum where national policy was being discussed. And I never quite took interest in the industry, and then back later, the discussions are still happening. I have heard of discussions happening about harmonizing and having one document that sort of addresses all concerns of the industry. I have heard of stakeholders that have been engaged for those conversations to then happen. I'm not sure of the results yet, and perhaps today we may not be able to find out, but I think that's the intention, is to head us to that particular place. Now, as I close my comment, I'll say I have made an application to CFYE, because I can see it on your background, Jennifer. And some of the questions the CFYE was asking, that's Challenge Fund for Youth Employment, was decency of jobs in terms of pay, hours, in that particular conversation. And one of my challenges was I was not able to prove, that whatever project I had in mind was going to provide jobs, and at a decent pay and decent working hours and all of that. And that for me was just a representation of what was going on, that the money that I was asking for, with that money I would not have been able to provide as many jobs, and from just one project, and even the sustainability coming out of that one project. So I will also say the nature of the creative industry is that way, that you have one project, you don't know how long it's gonna last, so it's a challenge for it to be sustainable. And that, I guess, feeds into the question, must art be a side gig? Because that has been said by Melissa that she cannot survive on it. So has Ziki said, and I guess everyone has said that it doesn't seem to be a sustaining sort of business, quote unquote, if you're looking at it as an entrepreneur. But then I believe art just brings quite a big contribution to the GDP of the country. So I think the interventions are actually supposed to happen from a national level, where we deal like the way LSK deals with lawyers. That's the only way I can say that there's a clear way of how do you charge, how do you engage, what are the terms of engagement. That's just my ramble on the topic. I thought I just chime in, because that's my feel on that particular discussion.
Okay. Well, we did try to get policy back on board, but I think we all know either availability or just, I think also the notion of being in a space where you probably be asked difficult questions you don't want to respond to, but we weren't able to get them. But that doesn't mean that we're not engaging with them. Ziki, Melissa, do you have any insights on any policy or institutional reforms that can help, or gaps?
I don't, but I do have a quick comment, and I'll make this quick so we can get to policy, on something that Ziki had said about Nigeria and South Africa working a lot better. After Country Queen, we were taken to South Africa by Netflix, and so we were with the top actors from a lot of their big shows from Nigeria and South Africa. Girl, they were having the exact same complaints as us. If anything, we were shocked at how much they complained more than we did. The exact same problems, pay is not enough, gatekeepers, and these are like the people we look at as like, these are celebrities, these people have millions of followers. They had the exact same complaints. And the reason that I mention that is sometimes we as Kenyans, we think that somehow leaving the country to go do our art is going to be our solution. There are problems everywhere. And so the best thing we can do is the same way they're building their industry, we build our industry, because you have especially a lot of new actors or even established actors. I'm going to go to Hollywood and be great. I'm like, girl, Hollywood is a lot harder than here where you are. There are lots less roles for you. And like you mentioned, there are gatekeepers in Nigeria that if you're not Nigerian, no, we handle our own. So I do want to encourage us to fix ourselves and also recognize that they also have their own problems. It's not easier. It's different. They have different issues. And something that Wamboi had said, I think in her first remarks, was about the word harmony. I think that's something that's very much missing in our industry. We have a very us against them within the industry, actors against producers, actors against the main houses, whether it's MultiChoice, Netflix, whatever it is. And we need to have more open discussions, even with the government. Because I remember sitting with someone at MultiChoice, I think it was Victoria, and she was telling me about all the things that the government has done in the past to try and help the arts industry. But as an actor, me, in my 10 years I've been in the industry, I always had the mentality of the government never does anything for us. But when you actually talk to people in the government, you realize, okay, this is what we've done. We could do more. This is the areas we'll move on. But people are trying. And I think the same with producers. If we had more forums for producers and actors to talk honestly, especially on the issue of pay. I've talked to actors who expect a certain amount of pay, and then I've talked to friend producers of mine, and they tell me what their budgets are. They tell me what all their costs are, and it's just like, it's not possible. Like with the budgets that they're given, it's not possible for them to provide what you want. It's not that they're hoarding the money for themselves. I've talked to some producers who are making less money per month than some of the actors. So if we have more transparency and more harmony and we come together to build it, including people in the government and policymakers, to build it rather than fighting against each other, I think we'll have a lot more solutions and we'll get them quicker. That was it.
Thank you. Ziki, oh, Moira, you have something?
Yes. Sorry, I wanted to ask, this challenge fund for youth employment, is it still open?
I can't speak on their behalf. We're hoping to have them do some final remarks if they're able to attend, but I can't speak on their behalf.
Okay. Because I can only see it for Ethiopia. I was just wondering if you're still open for Kenya.
Okay.
So I feel like I want to respond even if I'm not Jennifer. I checked them out. They were not open. I don't know when their next round is for Kenya, yes.
Ziki, do you have any reflections on the policy and any institutional reforms?
Yes, indeed. I would say policy will go a long way in getting more investment into our industry, overall, the creative industry. And without that, it's very hard to convince an investor that they will have their return on investment, especially when they see the little things that go on. You know, occasionally, because we don't have outlets for our grievances, you'll see things online. You'll see MCSK, they're paying $12.50. So as an investor who's not even interested in music per se, I'm just interested in investing in another business, and I see those kind of reviews online, I'll definitely not be interested in associating myself with creatives, with musicians, actors, because we end up looking like just this bunch of complainers who did not finish school or got bad grades and then decided, oh yeah, I'm going to become an actor, I'm going to become a musician, I'm going to become a graphic designer. We just end up looking fragmented, we end up looking unprofessional. We need to have an association or even a ministry, because we've been crying out for a ministry where we can have checks and balances instituted. We can have policies like a sexual harassment policy, because we don't to look like, okay, we keep complaining. There's a point in time where there was KE models, you know. Everyone assumes because you're in the entertainment business, then you're easy. You know, it's not professional. You just got together for the sake of it. It affects the general outlook of who we are out there in the business world. And we need these people to come in and inject funds and invest in who we are. And I referring to what Melissa has mentioned, that, you know, the Nigerian artists, creatives, South African creatives suffer the same fate we do in their internal industries, or, you know. But however, the difference is for them, what they show out there becomes something totally different. They have a Grammy winner, You know, okay, we have an Oscar winner, but you see, for them, there's more. Their craft is treated like an export. It's coffee. It's their coffee. You know, their Nigerian music is out there. It's broken so many barriers. We'll never even tend to think that maybe they have issues like us, but the general outlook internationally is that Afrobeats is the best thing that's ever happened since sliced bread, you know. Looking at Diamond has had the same investor since the inception of his career. We cannot say the same thing about here. Our actors, our musicians, our creatives will start off well. They might get a bit of investment here and there, and then they dip. It's just up, down, and then internationally we have Lupita, but they have to go out there to get it. You know, they are platformed differently than our Nigerian artists or our South African artists. It really affects investment. So policy would help the government to look at us differently, to imagine that there has to be like the lowest. You see the way they look at job groups, they look at us as part of that. You know, there'll be headlines about the same way we've had headlines about security guards getting 30,000. We should have headlines about creatives. The lowest should be paid 30,000. Percy, I mean, I'm not saying security guards are not important, but look at artists. We are lower. Tunabebwa ni kama we don't exist. Even boda associations are more powerful than our artist associations. So there's more that needs to be done. And yes, indeed, we as actors, as musicians, we also need to understand the plight of producers and the challenges of them injecting their investments or putting up productions. It's not an easy process, and we all just need to harmonize everything and to understand each other and grow together, because it's a journey for everyone.
Okay, thank you, Ziki. Mara, you have something to say before I go to the questions?
Yes, I just wanted to say that it's like we are expected to produce creative work at our own expense and around the outside corners of our lives. And everybody is so proud of it. They're proud of Kenyan creative work. We need some kind of a structure for turning that pride into money. Yeah.
I'm looking at the questions. We have a couple here, but anyone want to ask a question, you can raise your hand and we can allow you to speak. But there's one question here on, I think, talent management. Mercy is asking, how does one acquire a talent manager, especially for upcoming female artists? I don't know if it's something that you have had before or had experience with, but basically a talent manager, you know, to help them, I think, in their creative space. Would anyone want to respond to that question?
I can say something about that. I'm sorry, let me keep my camera off because I'm on data right now. My Wi-Fi tripped.
Okay.
But I do have a manager and I do have a team. It's hard because number one, there are very, very few in this industry. It is very hard, unless you have a personal connection with them, it's very hard for them to take on that role for new actors. And for even more experienced actors, the people who are way bigger than me in this industry, that my manager just doesn't have the capacity to take on anyone else. And then there are also a lot of managers who are scrupulous and are not good at their job. So in terms of how you can find a manager, to me, the best thing is let them come to you. And the only way you'll do that is by doing great work, showing your worth in the industry, showing that them working with you is not going to be in vain. Build your own brand. That's to me, and attract them to you. I think for me, that's the biggest advice I'd give.
Okay. Any other thoughts or contributions from Wambui, Mwara, Ziki? Okay. We have a question on discrimination and GBV. I think it's probably you, Melissa, who talked about this, because you had said that women go through a lot of discrimination and GBV in the creative industry. So Laureen is asking, are there any things that, having known that you're doing right now or putting in place to help like other female or other upcoming artists, so that at least it's either less or the impact is not as huge, if I got her question right. But this I can put it out to anyone also to respond.
I can say a bit of something about that. I really hope I'm not glitching a lot on your end in terms of my audio. What I do is I'm always preaching for people, not just men, not just women, but also men. Have agency over your body, have your boundaries, and be very strong on them. I do occasionally, actually, I'm doing one next month, an intimacy masterclass of how do you have the negotiations that you need to have around doing certain scenes that include anything sexual, anything to do with a lot of physical contact between any two actors. And I think giving them that space to train themselves on how to have those conversations with your producer, with your director, at which point should you be having those conversations. I think that really helps. Another thing that I would say, especially when it comes to sexual harassment, you could do everything right and it can still happen to you. But what I would say is try and do everything right first. And then if it happens to you, deal with that. And one of the things that I would tell, especially new actors, do not start in the industry by doing the kinds of things that will attract the wrong kinds of people. Don't go to auditions half naked. It's not going to benefit you. And the people to whom you will attract are not the kind of people that you want around you. Don't go to certain places for auditions. Don't go to some hotel room. That's not an audition. And don't offer yourself up for those services because you want to get into the industry, you really want a job. Because once you start that, people will talk and you will keep attracting those kinds of people. So what I would just say is from the outset, which I think is like for me, I've never had that, but also I would like to think may I have the persona that someone knows, don't even bother trying, it's not going to happen. And you need to have that, especially as a young actor. Just make it very clear, I'm here for my work and I'm going home. Don't mess with me. And hopefully it won't happen. And when it does happen, Wamboyemi, I'd love to hear from you because truly I don't know what to do. I've been in this industry 11 years. If something like sexual assault happened, harassment happened, if something bad happened, even me 11 years in, I don't know who to go to. I don't know what to do. So I'd love to hear your opinion from a production side.
All right, Melissa, you threw me right in there. I believe producers have a duty to make sure they do all and everything that is possible, including having the right policies in place to ensure that sexual harassment, it is very clear and expressed that sexual harassment is not to be tolerated. What I will say, in my experience, I have found that it is going to happen whether there's a policy or not. And perhaps the reactive measures is also something that's important. So for start, I do say that present yourself how you would like the world to receive you. And that is not a statement to say there's any way you will dress, you will speak, you will encourage conversation that is going to make you, a target or a victim, and that is even a conversation to have. So I need to start from that point. But I say when you walk into negotiations with a producer, one of the questions you need to ask, especially as an entrant into the industry, is and that's a right question to have been asked by Lorraine. What measures do you have in place? And if the producer says there's a sexual harassment policy, ask for a copy of it. Satisfy yourself that it is actually where you would like to work in. Share your thoughts on what it is that you think should be added. Now, that's the first step. When you get onto the ground, I think observe, even report what you think is nuances that they are not necessarily sexual harassment in a way that can be said, this is sexual harassment, but you feel it's uncomfortable conversations. One of the ones I have felt is, in interactions between crew and cast where the producer is not there every day. It will be how you're dressed and a certain, innuendo or comment is thrown in there. Even being outright saying, don't address me like that, don't call me like that. Sweetheart is a good name, but it is making me feel funny. And also making it very clear that once it happens again, then you will report it to the producers. I will say in my personal capacity, and I say it does help that in my capacity, I am a lawyer, so I look at any form of sexual harassment as a crime, and I would like to avoid any crime happening within my premises, even if not necessarily to protect you. It is also in my best interest that the environment is very, encouraging, especially when it comes to reporting such issues. So I do encourage first instance, when you feel something uncomfortable is happening, say it to the person, because also how we've been cultured, sometimes it's different. Some people think it's just a comment, it's not sexual harassment. When any action then when you need to take additional action, then involve producers, whether it's a production managers on the ground, but involve decision makers so they know what action to take. There are certain action where you feel like you can have a sit down and have an adult discussion of, do you know this is wrong? But there are certain actions that honestly are criminal cases. In my experience, I've not had to have a chance to prosecute that, and I think that's a good thing, because my assumption it has not happened. But I have known cases where police have had to be involved in such circumstances, and I believe at this point in time, all producers take that quite seriously. So it is your duty to ask what are the policies and ensure that there's a response coming when that happens, and all producers should respond to it properly. Similar to discrimination, I'm probably speaking from a point of bias because I'm in an environment where my executive producer is a lady, and there's a lot of ladies within the management team. So, and I think those are the main victims, at least to the best of my knowledge, of sexual harassment. So I might say I'm probably wearing rose-colored glasses for this conversation, because I reacted from a personal level. I react from it from a personal level, and I'm not sure it's the same as when it is predominantly a male, team where it is not being taken seriously. But the first step is to make sure it is clear that that is an issue that needs to be taken seriously. That is my general response to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry. I think one of the biggest things, and it's not just on sexual harassment, but it's just actors in general. One of the biggest things that keeps us silent is the kind of backlash you can get when it comes to sexual harassment. I've been on a set where someone felt like they were being sexually harassed. It wasn't me, but the way everyone, let's say in general, not every single one, but the majority, is they were not shunned. And when you now become, and then I feel like as an actor or just someone in this industry, the moment you become that person who brings problems, you're blacklisted like that. And now people are just like, and then people in our industry talk, let's be honest, the producers, the casting directors, people talk a lot. The moment you stand up, and we also know some very big actors who that's happened to, this person brings problems, we don't want to deal with their problems, so we're just not going to hire them. And I think it's the same thing, I would say, even when it comes to contracts, which goes back to our conversation about policy. I don't know what policies we could put in place, because one of the biggest issues for actors is our contracts are never honored, especially when it comes to pay. It's very rare that you're going to be paid in accordance to what your contract says when it says you're going to be paid. But it's like the moment you start pushing against a producer, or you start being like, yo, me, I need my money, or I'm going to go to court, whatever, it becomes a big thing. You get a lot of backlash. You are blacklisted, or people don't want to work with you. And so I think that's one of the biggest reasons, especially the actors and maybe some crew members as well, stay silent. And I don't know what we can do as industry ourselves, or what policies could be instituted so that that is not happening. Because I do know, honestly, that is one of the biggest reasons people don't talk, is I don't want my career to be ruined by speaking up. So that was just another angle.
I'm dying to respond to Melissa, but I don't want to take too much time. I will say that that's a real problem. There's no way of denying that those are things that happen. But I do say sexual harassment wasn't always an issue that was, a policy discussion. It wasn't always that there was always, companies, especially corporates, always had a sexual harassment policy. I think one day someone decided this is a big deal, and then the conversations needed to happen. And now, as part of ISO certification for corporate, you have to confirm that you have even a structure of complaint that is comfortable for anyone who needs to institute, a complaint on that matter. I will say that the creative industry is not any different. And why I say this is it is past. it could be a policy issue, but it is also just having the knowledge that if it bothers you enough, then you have to be prepared to go all the 9 yards for that particular issue to be addressed. And you could be the sacrificial lamb, by the way. Why I say that is because in my experience, one of the conversations, one of the nuances that, and it said as a nuance, this guy is a bit too touchy. That comment was enough for us to consider, is this person worth being in a space where they have, whether it is to mic someone, whether it is to direct your being to in someone's personal space. And we have made decisions of saying, you know what, we don't need them. And I feel that in some spaces, there are people who will react, and especially from a producer's perspective, there are producers who will react in a form of, this is not trouble I want to have. I will not have someone who exposes me to legal exposure. So I feel even as an actor or anyone in the creative space, it should bother you enough to say, you know what, come ambaya, as we like to say, I will still ask for this. I have found that I would not be bothered by someone who was not problematic, because of asking for something that is deserved. I also would like to say that I'm very afraid of not paying people what is in their contracts as a person. So there are people who will react in the way that reactions, the positive reactions are meant to come out. But yes, it is true in some cases you will have to fight. And going to court is not the worst that could happen. Sometimes it's the case we need for action to happen in the film industry or whatever other industry. So I advocate for go all the 9 yards if you feel you have a good cause. That's it.
Okay.
I will say no more, Jennifer. I will say no.
If I may,
just in maybe 2 minutes, Ziki, because okay.
Yes. like I mentioned earlier, we tried to tackle somewhere farm, as you can hear. Anyway, we tried to tackle this very issue, and for the most part, most people are unwilling to come out and say this is what happened because of the backlash from the research, confirming what Melissa has said. And from Wamboi's standpoint, yes, there has to be a sacrificial lamb, but it will not come easily. We already have so many issues. For people to even come out and say, I've been underpaid, that in itself is enough to be blackballed in this industry. So imagine coming to say so-and-so did this to me. I have same experience on set where an actor complained to the production that the sound guy sexually harassed her. Nothing was done to this person. And he went on with his career to the next place. And it was not a big deal. And if I've even been on sets where you're being mic'd and you're feeling some type of way, you have crew commenting on your features, you have a casting director, winking at you or telling you there's a casting couch. Let's just be open, things have been said. We are so fascinated when Kat Williams and Monique are talking about it because it's in America, but there are casting couches here in Kenya. They are there. I'm happy to share the toolkit from the research we did and from some of the recommendations that we made. It's digital and physical as well. So if you really like a copy, please do get in touch and proceed and send it to share it. It's important to share it, especially with our incoming creatives, so that we can at least try and address this issue from that level. Thank you.
Yeah. Allow me to end the conversation on GBV here. And it's very timely, this conversation, because what we're trying to do even as a program is working with our agenda experts and just trying to see that some of these things are taken into consideration as we try and help some of these artists. So it's a very timely conversation, and even hearing your insights. I think she's on the call, so even hearing your insights are very useful for us even as we move along with the program. There's one question here. Does anyone want to raise their hand to ask a question? Because I see there's one more question here. Then I think we can finalize.
I have something to say about policies on set. The very first policy that anybody asked me to sign was on the protection of children, because we work a lot with children in my cartoon studio, and I would encourage anybody who is wishing to step up and complain about the way they've been treated on set to consider that if you complain, it makes everybody safer. And we've spent a long time talking about sexual harassment, but things can happen to children as well. And it protects everyone if you speak up.
Yeah, that's true. Anyone want to raise your hands, giving an opportunity to the audience if you want to give a direct question?
I've been having a conversation here about copywriting.
Mm-hmm.
It was a rather vague question about content creation. We have brilliant ideas and no knowledge on how to get started. Write it down and copyright it. The Kakobo website is, well, look, it's no longer free. It was free up until last year. It's 100 book. Write it down, copyright it. Yeah, and then go ahead and figure out, because once you've copyrighted it, then you can share it freely and ask people to help you create it.
Okay.
Can I also say something about that question on content creation?
Sure.
Number one, if any opportunity that you have to get some kind of training or in the same room as people who are doing what you want to do, if you want to be a director, any kind of forum like this where you have directors there, be there. If there's master classes, if there's courses on directing or acting, do them. I know in acting we have so many master classes and courses offered by actual actors who are actually in the field. You need to invest in yourself in getting that knowledge. But then also I would just say, just do it. Every single person who's great now, they started. Just do it. Even if you do it wrong, even if it's horrific, you will learn from your mistakes and you'll get better. That a lot of our top directors, our top actors, that's where they started. They started doing it, they started making the mistakes and they got better. So please don't die with your brilliant ideas. Just start. Even if you don't know anything, just start and get better as you go.
Yeah, you have to let go of, I need to know how this is done before you start. Just let go of it. I want to do it, I'm going to do it. Yeah.
I have a final question for the four of you. One key approach, or why we even started this program, was when we did a lot of research and collected data, we realized most of the artists just produce something and go directly to the market. So for example, you would sing a song and upload it on YouTube, or you would dance and upload it on TikTok without actually knowing what does my audience need? What do they want to listen to? What do they want to read? And not having that into context before they create any content. So I want to hear from you. Are there any lessons, specific lessons that you have learned in terms of maintaining the balance of your passion? You love your animation, or you love singing, or you love doing what, but the practicality bit of it, because by the end of the day, you want to make money out of your talent. So it'd be good to hear your insights on that. Maybe starting off with moi. Yes.
I have a very positive opinion on this matter. I had an experience, well, I have taken my animation to, I think, every major TV station in this country over the last 10 or 12 years. But most recently, I took it to the youngest TV station in the country. And I think I had 1 or 2 episodes done, and I sat and played, and they watched with great politeness. It was very, and they sat and they watched, and it was completed animation, you see, with the soundtrack done, the script was written, the soundtrack was done, the animation was done, and they looked at it and they said, I was saying I need 13 episodes before I can give it to a TV station, and they said, that's going to take a long time. Why don't you just put the ones that you have on YouTube? Just put them on YouTube. and start. And so now I have launch events, I've done it, I've put them on YouTube. I'm still looking for funding, but those things are sitting there on YouTube and it is happening. Now, I know another female producer, an animation producer, who went to the same company with an idea. So this is my idea. This is my drawing of my character. This is my script. These are our principles. This is my animation idea. And they said to her, well, they said, you need to make sure that you are, I don't know what the word is, non-binary. Your characters need to be non-binary. They said, you need to have representation of this number of skin colors on screen. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to do that. Yeah, that's what happens when you turn up with an idea that's not been done. Yeah, you have to just do it and present people with a finished product. And then nobody starts saying non-binary, yada, yada. They just say, this is what you can do with this.
Okay, anyone else want to go to that balancing passion and practicality? Yes, Melissa.
What I would say is at the beginning, you need to know, what are you doing this for? Are you doing it for the money because you want, or are you doing it for the fame? Because some people just want that. Or are you doing it just because you want to do it? And even if you didn't get any money, you would do it anyway. If you're doing it because it's what you're passionate about, then you have full control. You can do whatever you want, whatever you want. If you're doing it for the money, if you're doing it for the fame, if you're doing it because you want to build a following, then also understand there might be other people who are involved in your creative process. And which is what maybe Moira is talking about. You go to a station and they're like, yeah, but let's add this character, let's do this. And you have to be able to take that on board, because now it's a collaborative experience if you're working with people or with a network or whatever it is. So I think at the very beginning, you need to ask, what are you doing it for? There's some creative projects. I know I'm doing a podcast right now on miscarriage. That's a creative project. That's my thing. That's my passion. I don't care whether I get paid, or I would love to get paid for it, but I don't care. And because I don't care, I have more control over how I do that creative process. So be very clear, and please, at the very least, as much as we're saying, just do it, work from the end backwards. What do I want at the very end? How do I make that happen all the way to now? Have a strategy. Don't just go into it blindly, because if you do that, you might find yourself ending up here when you wanted to end up here. So I have a strategy is what I would say. And talk to people who are in the industry, talk to people who have gotten to the place you want to go. What kind of questions were they asking themselves at step one? Just to make sure you don't start on the wrong foot. But why are you doing this is my biggest question I'd ask first.
Okay. Wamboi and Ziki.
I'm tempted to agree with just go in and do it. I mean, what's the worst that could happen sort of approach, but with a bit of a variant, and that is having an open mind that you may have to vary your idea or change it a bit, maybe to address the concerns of the audience if you're keen on, retaining some audience. And the assumption is you will need an audience for whatever content it is that you're preparing. And if I was to borrow from an experience at least I've been part of, and this is as a corporate, is what we went in with. Our initial mission, vision, and even strategy was to produce what we'd call as evergreen content. It's going to be reasonable today, tomorrow, the years after. And then as we look at how the audience is responding to things that our own, and I'm not talking about commissioned work because that takes a different direction. I mean, your own projects that you even put your heart and soul and money in. A couple of years, we're looking at it and we're like, well, we knew we wanted evergreen, but this is not relating to the current world. So you sort of tweak a thing here and there to still remain, within your principles, but being able to attract the audience that you had in mind for whatever it is that you originally had. So you find yourself going content that if you are not intending to do comedy, you could find yourself doing still within your principles, but comedy. So it is do what you're doing, but being open to feedback from your audience and other players within the industry, because you can be the smartest person you have met. Sometimes you need to sit and listen to others. And if they're giving, valuable advice and guidance, getting guidance from the right people. So yes, go in, do it, be open to to feedback. Awareness as well, as to why is it that you are going into it to begin with. And because this helps, as Melissa has already said, if you can see the purpose, you can keep looking at, am I still achieving the purpose that this was meant to, the purpose that this was meant to address. So I will say, as a closing, is you could vary what you had originally in mind, but first start by putting it out there. It's okay 10 years later to be embarrassed at the content you put in 10 years ago and still be like, who was that? But from a point of having grown from that, yeah.
Ziki?
I think most of the pointers have been mentioned, which are very good pointers. Don't be afraid to fail. Try not to be afraid to fail. I think when I look back to when I started up until now, one of my greatest, what would I say? Okay, one of my greatest challenges has been that I've been afraid to fail. And I think owing to also sometimes when you invest and you get really hurt, your fingers are burnt and you're thinking, nitarudi tu hapo tena. That kind of complicates it because you're looking at what you've invested, time, you're looking around, families also watching you. They're like, yeah, you made that decision. We told you to do that other thing, but you are stubborn. And there's a sense of fear, there's a sense of shame, guilt. I would say if you're able to overcome those, or if you're able to address the fear of creating, the fear of rejection, and it happens a lot to us in the creative industry, and we really become sensitive and it affects our mental health. And with time, it can really get to you. And right now, I'm really feeling it because the recent death of Charles Ouda really touched many of us. I'm not speaking to anything that happened to him. I'm just saying that you want to be in a space where you see yourself win and you see the people around you win. You might be competing for the same resources, the same opportunities, but you want to see each other moving along in the same journey. So it's important to be unified. It's important to work together. When you get a mentor, work with them. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be on this journey alone. And when you fail, reach out to the people around you. You might feel like, you're alone in this space because there's so much happening in our heads. I mean, if you're a creative, I'm sure you talk to yourself. You have voices in your head, and it's not that other thing that people try to make it look like, but you're always having this bursts of ideas. And sometimes you're so unsure, you don't know how to move about it, you don't know where to go, and you're held back by all of these different emotions that you're experiencing and all of these different conditions and your environment. So try to open up your mind a whole lot, read a lot from other sources. Most of us are multi-hyphenates. You'll find that you're gifted in so many other different areas, and there's nothing wrong with exploring. There's nothing wrong with trying again. There's nothing wrong with failing. I look at Dave Chappelle's journey. He was called the pilot because he kept on submitting so many pilots and they kept on failing. And look at him now, it takes time. For some, the shock value of, appearing somewhere semi-naked or doing just something like Embararamba, that guy who used to roll around in that, maybe that works for them. But you can't beat your journey. If your journey takes a certain amount of time, just, trust the process. That's what I'll say. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Trust this thing that was put in you by whatever you believe in. Just trust in it. And I think that's really eventually what pays off, because we're not really here to reinvent the wheel. We've seen all of this. Someone will come up with the latest, design, And then you find out, ayapana, this has been done kitambo. We are not going to reinvent the wheel. However, the true essence is that it's you. No one can beat you at being you. That's the truest essence of your art. And that will never grow old. So trust the process, trust yourself, and keep building on what you have, because your worth is your worth. No one can take that away. Even if you paid 5,000 bob for something that really was worth 500,000, just keep reinforcing yourself and you'll get there.
Authenticity and originality, I think that's one thing you're talking about. Let's be original and authentic. Ziki, Wamboi, Mwara, and Melissa, thank you so much. I want to, in the next 2 or 3 minutes, if you have time to respond, there are 2 questions on the chat, but I don't want to open it up, but you can quickly type in your response if you have a response on that. But allow me now to invite Paul from CFYE to give us closing remarks. Paul, are you there?
Very good afternoon.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here, and a very good afternoon to every one of you, those that are seen and those that are not seen, because I think we had quite a number of listeners, guys who are actively listening and also asking questions. My name is Paul, currently serving in the role of Deputy Country Lead for the Challenge Fund for Youth Employment project under Palladium in Kenya. And well, today I came wearing the learning heart because the creative, leave alone gender, the creative part of this is something that is very close to my heart and the heart of my senior colleague, Beatrice, who is currently attending a meeting right now with the embassy as we speak. So she sent me. And one of the reasons why we thought that we need to come into the space and start pouring little by little whatever finds can be availed to the creative sector is to want to learn, because we want to be able to understand a few things. Why is it that, as I think it's Mara who did mention that funding and facilitation is needed to make this industry what, for example, coffee is, or what agriculture is, or what women empowerment programs are, or what youth economic development program are, and all. But of course, we are coming with a very clean slate. The same applies to USIU in the COCIA project and the NIERA project, to try and understand what is there out there and what is working, what is not working, why is it not working. And sitting here and listening, I can tell there are a number of things that I think I've been able to pick and lighting my bulb on what can be done, but it's not conclusive for us. To be able to say now this typically what it is that we want to see by the end of the day. But we keep on looking and still learning. And what are we looking? We are looking for areas where, you know, someone can say, let me put this level of capacity, or let me put this level of funding, or let me come in and be able to assist as much as I can in the sector, so that by the end of the day, then we can raise it like the dairy, we can raise it like the potato industry, we can raise it just like any other industry that we have seen, you know, investments coming in and all that. We are not aware, and we would want to learn as much as possible the level of investment around this area. And I'll be reaching to some of you guys to be able to understand a little bit more on this, so that then we can be able to sit down, whoever wants to sit down with us, or to stand up, whoever wants to stand together with us, and tell them this, listen, this is what we can find in the sector, and this is really what is working. This is where the shoe and all that kind of thing, and this is what really we think needs to be done. So the journey I would say began with the likes of USIU, COCIA program coming in, and a few others that we are also looking at what else is out there, the graphic designers and those that are in the fashion industry and all that kind of thing. Can we be able to learn together and be able to see what ticks and in which subsector is it worth, you know, spending a little bit more time in as much as possible. So those are some of the things I think you will see us do a lot more, participating in these kind of forums and also going out there to seek information that would actually help us make more funding decisions or more informed funding decisions in the days ahead. By days ahead, it could be months, it could be a year, it could even be days and all. There were a few questions that came in when I was listening. Kenya is closed for now for calls, but that does not mean it will not open. It keeps closing and opening depending on the availability of funding. So Wamboi, you mentioned that. So we will be back. We will be back shortly. Afro Cinema continues shortly. So we'll keep coming. And of course, we have what Mara was talking about in Ethiopia. We have programs that are happening in Uganda and all. Kenya is the biggest portfolio. Don't look so far away. And of course, we'll always be able to come back to all the Washikadao and say, hey, there is these things that we want to be able to do together. Why don't we see the opportunities of doing that? I agree with Melissa and the rest of the people who have come in and say, well, the decency of, you know, the decency of job or the decency of incomes that are being, you know, that are in the creative sector is low and all that. And you can bet I keep on interacting with this in most of the informal sectors that we are working with, you know, looking out also disparities. The incomes could be low, but even lower for women and all that kind of thing. We may not have a solution for now to say, well, this is the one bullet kill or that we would want to bring on board as much as possible. We will also want to be able to understand what it is that can be done, what is there and what can be done, so that then together we can be able to move. I want to say thank you for inviting us, Jennifer and Professor Amos and the rest of the team, and also for, you know, for these kind of interactive sessions that we have had, and also an advice session for those who are also in the industry. I would encourage us to continue having this kind of discussion. Thank you.
Is there a mechanism for reaching people who are on this call? How would people be able to reach me if they want to?
I could share your email if you're up for that. It's just up to you. We have all the email addresses, so I could share your email if you're interested in that.
Yeah, probably the reason why Mara is asking is that probably as you share some of the products of this meeting, you could share with everyone, so that then we can have everyone's email. I think that's what Mara is asking.
I want to be reachable for when the Afro Cinema Fund comes back out and when the Challenge Fund for Youth Employment comes back out. Kenya. I want to be easily reachable.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Jennifer.
I come to mind and you'll go like, oh, Mara will want this, and I have her email.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think Jennifer, you have the leeway, and also Salome. I can see Salome on call. I think you have the leeway of doing that, so that then everyone can have everyone's contact.
Yes, absolutely. Allow me to stop. Okay. Allow us to stop. Thank you so much. Do have a good evening.
Bye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye, Jennifer. Thank you very much.
Bye.
All right, bye guys. Bye, Jennifer.
Bye.